Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Lo.
I feel like I've seen you so much this week, and it
I know.
actually warms my heart. It makes my heart become like a latke. It makes it feel like
Oily?
juicy, oily. I guess you don't want your heart to be oily.
No.
No, but it
Like,
makes my heart feel really juicy.
oh, that's so sweet. But
And
me,
our microphones are in the same frame. I love it.
I know. Mwah.
Hello.
Hello.
Sponsor us, Yado. Sponsor us.
Oh my God. I thought you were going to say Vessi again. And I was going to say, oh my God, they must be like, this guy, hero. Who the hell is this hero? Like,
But you
stop.
know what?
Sorry, go.
What's funny though is that the three co-founders and a couple of the people in the head office that have been there since the company really started, before it really grew. They know me, so they can't say who the hell
Uh,
is this guy. They actually know who I am.
oh, okay. That's funny. How do they know you?
Just by Instagram, and then by going to their head office for some product sampling and testing, and then also through pop-up shops and all the head office crew being there when they had like 10 or 12 people only. For now, they have like, I think they're almost at 30 plus people and continue to hire.
Yeah, I can
So like
see.
I have a, that's why I'm so invested in them, is because I actually know them and I've had dialogues with them.
Yay, Vancouver-based local company that's exploding. That's great.
Yeah, and just while we're at it, before I introduce our guests, like Vancouver has so many incredible startup brands that have become worldwide, international, global brands.
Oh yeah.
Um, like Doer Denim Performance, which is where I work, and absolutely am obsessed and love to death and feel so at home at Doer. So thank you, Doer, for providing
Yeah.
me a home where I could be authentically hero and help people. And Vessi, where I'm able to wear stuff every day on my feet, where I feel super happy and healthy. So thank you, Vessi and Doer, for
And
representing Vancouver.
I'll just mention the most famous one, I believe, just speaking with, apparel, Lululemon, right? So that's
Yes.
the most famous one, although Lulu, I mean, and we don't have to get into a conversation about Lulu, but yeah. Yeah, but I woke up this morning and I knew my body is so in tune with weather. I'm very affected by the weather, and we've talked, Hero and I've talked about this before, but and the season changes and those kinds of things. And I just had this feeling, and I looked at the window and there's tons of snow. So I shouldn't say ton. Well, there's a decent amount. I don't know what tons means. It's not tons for Canada.
Right, it's true. Yeah, it's true.
Tons for Canada is like, you know,
5 to 10 centimeters.
oh, like feet, like many feet of snow, probably. Well, think about like Alberta. Think about
Right.
like Quebec,
Oh,
Ontario,
sorry. Right. I thought you were. We said you did say Canada. I thought you were referring to BC though. That's why.
BC. Yeah, so we probably have a couple, maybe just a couple centimeters of snow, but it's snowing right now. But it's just
Wow.
yeah. But I always feel like my throat's a bit dry in the morning, and I'm like,
Mm.
oh, something's like, Anyway,
Are your breasts dry?
what the fuck?
Because because is that like the old wives' tale, that that breast, like a woman's breast like can tell the weather or whatever, you've heard, you know that reference point.
Well, no, I don't know.
Yeah, a woman's boobs are supposed to be able to predict the weather.
I think someone just
Haven't heard that?
oh, what
Yes.
nipples? Oh, you mean just like okay, like if you're hard, it's cold outside, like that kind of thing?
Is that actually what they're referring to? This entire time, is that what that reference was from?
Oh, hero, I don't know. I think we need to have a whole like conversation around me educating you about breaths and about the woman's body. Like, I don't know. And maybe we could do vice versa.
Can we do that? That'd be great. We do a sex education class updated.
And I'm actually being serious now.
I'm being serious too, getting sexual.
God, just because I don't know how many times, like if I could count the amount of times that you've either talked about breasts, like said the word breast, or this. And if you're not watching me, I'm like shaking my boobs around because even last night, and I know our guest is coming on in a second, but last night, this is just kind of a funny little tidbit of information. We've been doing these very short Instagram live mini ones for Hanukkah. So for the 8 nights of Hanukkah, last night I wasn't watching, but I rewatched last night, and with our intro song, Hero will play the intro song and we kind of like dance a little bit. And I rushed it back. I didn't realize you were shaking your boobs again. You were doing, and I was like, I did like a whole face palm, like, oh my God, okay. Even see it. So I started laughing. Anyway.
It's funny.
It
In the most ridiculous way.
I didn't catch that in the moment. So anyway, okay, we gotta, I know, our lovely guest is coming on any second.
Yeah.
We'll stop talking about the rest of this.
So our lovely guest this morning is someone who've actually only met once in person, and about 5 years ago, actually no, like 6 years ago now that I think about it. But her name is Deidre Sirianni, and Deidre Sirianni is a yoga teacher. But what I actually was really inspired to know about is, since I've seen her for that time long ago, she's actually really established herself as a trauma coach and as a mental health advocate, and has her own podcast which she can talk about. And she has really become a figure and has always been very sharp in branding and being an entrepreneur, and to really build a platform for her own voice. And with that being said, I don't want to give too much away, but
Mhm.
at the same time, I would love for her to explain a little bit more about what she's been up to, because she is similar to Rachel and myself as being candid, very feisty, very open and raw and outspoken. And so it's really lovely having a variety of guests on the show as we've had so far. And some are more conservative and reserved and kind of want a little bit of a different introduction. And some people can
Mhm.
just come on and be like, hey, I'm here. Here's what I'm about. This is what I want to talk about. And that's
Mhm.
what I love about our show, is that it's been so inclusive of so many different kinds of personalities and walks
Mhm.
of life. And Deidre, I think it's, sorry, Deirdre. I have a friend named Deidre, so I keep saying Deidre.
Okay, and I thought it was Deidre because it's Deidre.
Oh, okay. So maybe it is Deidre. Okay,
Oh
no,
gosh.
it's okay. That's okay. That's okay. We can talk about that.
Oh,
We
I
can
just
talk about that.
one of those people that like absolutely cannot stand. Like I try to get people's names right. I'm very like,
I know, totally. But you know
oh,
what though? You know how many times people get my name wrong?
oh,
Even
I'm
though it looks so obvious?
Hiro.
Hyro, or Hero with one I, or Hero with two R's.
Okay. Yeah.
All the time. People always say two R's. Like, I'm not Spanish.
And it is Hiro. Okay, no, sorry. It is Deidre.
Deidre, yes.
So I just looked it up.
Yeah, Deidre.
Deidre Sirianni.
Yeah,
I watched the first few minutes of her TEDx talk as well.
nice.
Really, and I was also on her website, but I really want to know about how she started. Oh, and there she is.
Yay!
Great opening to this.
Hi! How are you?
I'm so good. A little tired this morning, but c'est la vie. I've been doing late night workouts.
Oh my God,
I
seriously?
feel hungover in the morning from working out and drinking so much water.
Ah, oh my God, it's the new COVID. It's the new COVID fitness lifestyle.
Totally.
Oh my God, you are so.
What prompted you to do late night workouts? Is that a new thing for you, new routine, or
So I'm doing, have you guys heard of 75 Hard?
No.
no?
So
Very, yeah.
it's
Okay.
2 workouts a day and they have to be at least 2 to 3 hours apart. So it's 45 minutes twice a day. I have to drink a gallon of water and there's a few other pieces in there, like follow some sort of diet, whatever that is. And for me, I already eat healthy. So I've just cut out a couple things that, don't make me feel good. But the workouts, because I've been so busy with like all the things I'm creating that it's like 6 o'clock. I'm like, man, I haven't got my first workout in. I go to the gym, come back, do some work, eat dinner. And then I'm like, okay, I have to wait 2 to 3 hours. And then I go to the gym at like 9 or 10 at night. And then I come home and I finishing my gallon of water because that's what you have to do. And then I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I feel hungover. But I'm like, it's from out late and it's from the water I've been drinking.
Oh my God, girl, you haven't changed a bit since I saw you last, and I knew that you would be ready to go right away, which I am so happy about. Seriously. I was just kind of introducing you and was saying that we just wanted to have you introduce yourself a little bit, because you and I have only met once, but I've seen so much about what you've been up to, and I know that we clicked immediately. And now that you're here, I'll kind of speak just a little bit about how we did meet and what we were doing when we met, because that was really hilarious. I don't know if you remember what we were doing.
I don't know.
So there was a yoga studio that it's Deidre, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, okay. That Deidre and I were hired to teach at. They chose not to go forward with me being a teacher there, which is their loss. And then Deirdre actually taught there for quite a while. And so they had a connection to the yacht club in Kitsilano, around Kitsilano Beach. So all the teachers gathered there, and we said hello, got to know one another. And one of the main teachers at the time who was teaching for the studio was actually a stand-up paddle expert and owner of stand-up paddle. And so Rachel, I think
all these people, I love it because you're not saying names, but I'm like, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, I've never, I'm very, not the best coordination. My nonverbal learning disabilities are definitely not, do not lend a hand to things like skateboarding or anything that's not on actual feet on ground. But they brought out paddles, and they were like, oh my God, let's go boarding. We'll teach you. We'll give you a lesson for a couple hours. Anyway, so I go in there. I've got my sonic blue, aqua blue hair at this point still. Yeah. And they're like, okay, I haven't gone on the ocean for years. So all I had were a pair of hot, maybe 1 inch inseam boy shorts from To Exist, a gay men's underwear line. They were ocean blue. And then the person that was leading the thing, she's like, I actually don't have any more male wetsuits, but I have a female one from Roxy. Do you want to try that on? And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to try that on. And so then it's literally a lime green with peplum, scallop hemming at the bottom. So I come out and my balls hanging out of this freaking boy short that I bought when I was 17 in New York at Century 21. And I'm wearing this freaking Roxy thing on my top with my aqua hair. I look like a freaking Marvel superhero. I was ready. And then I was screaming like a freaking queen on the ocean, barely setting up on this board for about an hour and a half. And it was incredible. And that's how Deidre and I met. And we kept in touch since and on different occasions. But this is the first time we've actually been in contact since. And I was like, girl, you've grown your brand, you've grown your following. You used to work for Novus, and then you had Yoga Rush, which I remember you were doing quite a bit, which is corporate athletic yoga practices and fitness practices. And then all of a sudden you just boom, pivoted. And now look at where you are with a podcast and trauma health informing. And yeah, and I just we want to know all about it. And what are you doing? What have you done?
Well, first of all, it's so funny that you brought us back to that moment, because I think I get reminders on my phone, or maybe it's Facebook or my computer, electronics. I mix them up these days. It's all the same, right? Especially when you're in the vortex all day. But that picture of us being on the paddle boards has come up many times. And you're geeking out so hard, and it's so funny. And it's actually really hard to do Warrior 2 or anything on the paddle board.
Oh my God, it's so hard. It's so hard. And the reason why I'm looking down is I'm going to pull up that photo because it is priceless. That's why I'm looking down. I'm paying attention. I'm not online shopping. But
I'm a major avid paddleboarder. I paddle. If I could paddle all year round, I would. It's snowing right now in Vernon. I live in Vernon, so it's we just had our first big snowfall. But I do have full neoprene. But I've been trying to get Hero back on a paddleboard because he told me this story, and I'd love for that recreation to happen, perhaps. But anyway,
I would love that, and I really hope I still have the photo because I'm telling you, it is. Oh my God!
Funny.
It's
that was a fun day.
That was a fun day. I literally got a 6-pack just by doing all that.
For whatever reason, Hero, I thought that we met at Y Yoga, not what you're talking about. I thought we met at a teacher training together.
Oh, really? Did you do a teacher training at Y Yoga?
Yeah, I thought we did our teacher training together. No?
I did the yin training, and I did a Y Sculpt 4-hour training.
Okay, no, I'm mixing things up. It feels like forever ago, right? So
yes, but here, I have to show this. Look at this hot mess.
I love it.
Oh, you're so cute.
Oh, yeah. I was living my best life. I hadn't started teaching spin or Pilates yet. I had not the most tone. My legs look the same now because I've been out of practice for so long. But anyways,
Hero, you look your smile is always so infectious. It's great. And we're not even talking about Deidre at all.
I mean, this is super fun for me. So,
Goodness.
Deirdre, it's all about you today. And I just thought the context of the story of how we kind of met each other would have been a perfect setup for going into the dialogue about yourself and everything that you've been doing. And I would love for you to take the stage and just kind of tell us whatever you want to tell us about, even if it's not related to what you're doing with your career. Just talk and let us know what you're doing. We can riff off of that.
yeah. Oh, I love this. So it's super interesting. So you met me when I was doing yoga full time. So I've gone through so many different like evolutions of just like, this isn't who I am. Oh, this isn't what I want to do anymore. And just like making a change. And so I guess like where I really want to start, because one of my favorite areas to talk about and educate on, and one of the things that I'm super passionate about is trauma and also true identity. And I know that that's something that's like right up your alley. And by the way, Rachel, so nice to meet you. Like we should totally hang out sometime. I'm up in Kamloops right now, and I'm going to be up in Vernon lot. So we'll have to coordinate that at some point.
I would love that. And you know what, please continue, but you're really striking a chord, because yesterday we actually had a whole episode about specifically intergenerational trauma and the Holocaust and those kinds of things. So yeah, so trauma has actually been quite a big topic in our podcast lately. So yeah.
Trauma, not drama.
Well, both.
Well, it's really hand in hand. And so we can jam on that too. It's like, so when I was young, as we all had trauma. And I think it's an important thing to know. It's like, my cat's making noise. My cat runs the show around here, guys. I'm just gonna
Bring your cat.
Oh, they're playing on the ground.
Oh my God, there's two?
There's two. There's a small one and there's a big one, but I'll introduce them later. I think they're gonna play fight right now. But so when I was younger, I experienced trauma. I had a parent who was had an addiction, and because of that, like anytime we're in relationship with someone who has an addiction, whether it's a parent, whether it's a good friend, brother, whatever, there's specific behaviors of addiction. And so when I was young, I was like the peacekeeper. I was the one that's like, everything needs to be okay all the time, right? And so also another thing that happened from being in that dynamic at a very young age is I got really good at living a dual life. So I'd go to school in elementary school, and I'd be super happy and cheery and everything's great. And then I'd go home some days and, I wouldn't know necessarily if my loved one would be alive. And it was heartbreaking, but I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. And it was like this big secret that I had at a very young age. So I grew up being really good at acting like everything's so great all the time, as a cover up for what was going on in my home life, right? And so I grew up, and this continued into my adulthood, of being like the happy-go-lucky person, friends with everyone, but I never let people get too close to me, because I had this fear that they would see the truth. They would actually know what was going on. And I had shame, I had guilt, I was taking on, what was going on in my life as it was me. And so I grew up and I, had another big trauma when I was 19. I was raped, and I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. I didn't have the kind of support that I needed. And, when that happens, when we're violated or, in any way, it's really common for the victim to be like, oh my gosh, did that even happen? Was it my fault? And so I didn't have the tools, the support. So what did I do? I shoved it down and I went back to playing my role of everything's great. I went off to university and I focused on my career, and I went to school for broadcast journalism, and I was the girl that was like, oh, you don't think I can do that? Oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to have my own show. I'm going to do this. So I was like moving up really quickly in TV and radio. but that was a way for me to avoid dealing with what was going on internally. I didn't know that then. I know it now. And it's really common in today's culture. And then I hit a point in doing that where I was like, I love it. But I ended up getting married and ended up moving to Vancouver from Alberta. And not the healthiest dynamic of a relationship, but the first person I ever met that was like a rock solid person. Like they were always who they said they were. Do you know what I'm saying? And as someone who's had like a lot of uncertainty growing up, I was like, like safety, love, right? And through that process of moving from Calgary and changing careers over to Vancouver, I couldn't find anything in my field that I loved. So I became a yoga teacher because everyone was a yoga teacher. And I was like, I need something in the meantime to like, figure out until I get back into TV and radio. And again, I had a lot of healing to do that I didn't know I did. So I got really good at looking in the outside world to accomplish, to do, to be. I got married, buy a house, buy a car, whatever, like build a business. But I kept having this feeling every time I would reach like a goal or a milestone in my life. And I'd like look around and be like, is this really it? Is this really all that there is? And have you guys ever felt that before when you like reach a milestone and you're like, why did I even do this?
Oh yeah.
Well, sometimes I also feel like you start to feel like, well, is there more? Is this it?
Mm-hmm.
Is this that important? Like there's something still missing.
Yeah.
Right.
But also one of my trauma patterns is that when I had before my brother died, when I was only 12, and he was the typical kind of older brother that never wanted to spend time with me. And I was also the one that never gave up. I had this like relentlessness to spend time with him and to be accepted by him, to be for him to want to need me. And so for him always bribing or blackmailing or anything he could to take advantage of that willingness to actually spend time with him, because I was a little shit, but he was even a bigger shit. Bitch. But anyways, I think what I'm going at is that it sets a traumatic pattern to be a chaser. And so it affects my romantic life in terms of me always being a chaser. And when I get chased, it's harder for me to receive, even though I've gotten better. And when I came into my teaching career, I always was chasing what I wanted and would get it if I wanted it, even if I was told no, which is exactly how it's been my entire career, except until very recently of last year. So these patterns of trauma release might stay within you, even if you can change them. They also become part of you. It's just how you cope with them and how you nurture them and realize that's who you are. And people have to understand that.
Isn't that, it's so interesting. And Deidre, you were talking about how, like you seem to teach yourself to tell yourself that everything's fine. Just put on a brave face. Like, the world doesn't need to know my pain. And, and I was taught that in a different way with, growing up, because there was trauma with Holocaust surviving or grandparents and those kinds of things. So it was always like, it could be way worse. You do not your life is fine. So I was taught like, everything's fine. So I didn't know how to deal with shit when it wasn't okay, because I was always told that it could be way worse. Like your issues are nothing.
Mm-hmm. That's like such a way of like shaming for having emotions and like not even like aware of it. Not saying that's anyone's intention, but it's like there's this weird comparison that's going on with healing and trauma. It's like, oh, well, I didn't go to war and see someone, die in front of me. So I shouldn't feel what I feel. And I think that's the biggest thing that blocks us from healing, is being in shame or denial or not accepting where we're at. Like when we don't accept, we cannot heal, we cannot grow, because we're constantly in battle within ourselves. So that's really cool that you brought that up.
Thank you. Yeah. So then, well, back to you though. So then so you went through all those things, and then it sounds to me like you were almost coming upon, like, I hate to use that aha moment because I feel like it's redundant to say that, but it sounds like you definitely came to a point in your life where you did have that. So what happened?
Yeah. So, I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but I'm like the most stubborn person I know. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
pretty damn stubborn. I'm like, I can figure it out on my own. Like, like that's always been how I've been. And I think a part of it is from growing up and feeling like I've had to raise myself in some ways. And so I kept having these moments of, is this really it? But the relationship I was in, he was like, everything's amazing. And from the outside looking in, people wanted to like get where I was at. Like people thought I was the happiest person they knew. So it was very confusing because my career was going well. I had all these opportunities. I looked happy and all this stuff, but I didn't feel it. So what happened for me was I got busier because I didn't want to deal with it because I didn't know how to. I didn't have the tools. And my wake up call, and I've had many, and I have many every year in different areas of my life because that's the human journey, right? If we're really on it, is I had a lot of manifestations of dis-ease, and our soul speaks to us through manifestations of disease.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of stomach pain. I had a lot of anxiety. I had anxiety attacks where I thought I was having a heart attack. And I had a lot of skin issues like psoriasis, autoimmune diseases. I had a vision of killing myself. I went through depression, but I was a high functioning person though. So it's like people don't connect that,
No.
and that's tough too for people who are performing, but sometimes you're performing to avoid something. And it's
Yes.
like this pattern, like some people can't get out of bed and some people can't stop because it's the same thing. It's just
Correct.
looks different.
Right.
And so those weren't my wake up calls because I was like, psh, anxiety attack, oh, skin issue, oh, this, whatever, excuses for it. And then I was going through my hair one day, and Hero, I don't know if you remember, but I used to have mermaid hair. It was like kind of my thing. It was down to my hips.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, it was fabulous.
Hair to me right now. So I don't know. I mean, I didn't know you back then, but I'm like, anyway.
Thank you. But so my hair was down on my hips, and it was kind of my thing. And so I went through my hair one day, like just casually like this, as we do with our long hair. And I was like, I have a little scar on the back of my head. And I was like, oh, is that my scar? I'm like, oh no, this feels a lot bigger than my scar. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I remember getting my phone out and doing like the video thing or what's going on in the mirror. And I found this massive bald spot that was the size of a toonie. And this was probably like 6 years ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to go to the doctor, fix me. I went to the doctor. And the doctor's like, we can give you some stuff for it, but looks like you have alopecia. You've developed another autoimmune disease, and you're probably going to continue to lose chunks of your hair, and you could potentially lose all of your hair.
Right.
And it was like, I was like, so what? You can't fix me. So I went home and I got the medication, and I had this aha moment of, I was already studying Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life, all that stuff. I was already like preaching that stuff. Even I wasn't teaching it, but I was like believed in it. When we say we believe in something, but we're not living it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can heal myself. And I looked at the definition. And I'm like, I'm not listening. And I told my husband, who was anti all of these things, I'm like, I don't care if you're judging me. I'm putting affirmations all over the house. I'm healing myself. And I went a little bit crazy right in that space. And my hair grew back. Haven't lost it since. That's been 6 years.
Wow.
And I really went on that path of discovering my truth. I've studied with shamans for, the past 7-ish years. I've been to all the personal development things you can think of. I've read a ton of books. I've had my gifts to the universe open where I'm able to communicate with all living things. And through my awakening, I really realized that I had built a life that wasn't my own. I had left my marriage. I left that career. I basically have changed my identity again to find out who I am. And it was really about releasing everything that wasn't me to find out who I was. And that's when I stepped into what I do now, which was about 4 years ago. And it was just super easy and natural. I'm like, everyone was telling me I was a coach and a guide. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I just never had the courage to step into it. And then right away, my business like blew up first year, and it was just a space of flow. And I teach people how to heal their trauma. I help them do that work with them. I help them integrate change, activate their highest gifts, because we're like trees. We're like Christmas trees with like 2 or 3 lights on. And when we're fully activated, we can have all our lights on and be like a Ferrari going down the street. Like we can just show up, and that's where we can make our impact. But going back to trauma, this is something I really want to cover. Sorry, guys. Are you guys following the story?
Yes, absolutely. We like, love this. Yeah, we're the same way as you. We're the same kind of expressors and thinkers as you are. This is why I wanted you on the show.
And Deidre, like you're speaking to, I think you'll be speaking to a lot of people, but I'm also like, I did a big pivot this year myself, and I'm on the cusp of like trying to be like, okay, fuck you, anxiety. I've had you for way too many years. Anyway, you're preaching in the choir. So continue, please.
Also, with anxiety, what I've learned specifically about anxiety, that can come from an unhealed trauma where your nervous system isn't out of whack. So when we have a trauma, basically what happens is it's like a moment that's frozen in time. So if we were to take a picture of this moment, we all in that moment, whether we're aware of it or not, there would be an image, a thought, a body sensation, an emotion, and then the energetic of where we're at, right?
Yep.
And so what happens when we have a trauma, it's a strong imprint on us. It's frozen, okay? And because we're not able to process it, it stays there, okay? And so what happens when we experience a trauma, oftentimes we step outside of our body and we're not aware of it. Like we're not actually in our bodies, which can cause a lot of anxiety and all these different patterns. And it's not until we can complete the cycle and go to the root of it and fully process that feeling, process that experience, it's in our subconscious awareness. So on a day-to-day basis, you can be like going to the grocery store, you can be like doing whatever you do, and it's super casual and easy, but something small is a trigger in your subconscious mind that reminds you of the image, that reminds you of maybe a smell of the trauma, like of something that was going on in that room, of a thought that's similar, or a body sensation, or the energetics, and your subconscious is triggered, and then anxiety can start. So it's like, there's so many different things that we can do for anxiety. Of course, deep breathing and, heavy blankets and, meditation. And those are wonderful. And I love those tools. However, if we want to go to the root cause of anxiety, it usually has to do with an unhealed trauma. And when you're able to complete it, you're able to be in your body, and the anxiety oftentimes goes away, unless it's a hormonal thing. Sometimes anxiety can be a hormonal imbalance, and then that's something different. So just wanted to bring that up because that's worth investigating.
Yeah. Now, something that you mentioned something about your skin, because so I'm just getting super personal here with myself. Like, if you can, I'm just going to show that. Like, I have like a ton of cystic acne, and it's come up a lot more with I think hormonally, but was that something that when you kind of, brought your anxiety down and you, were kind of self-healing and those kinds of things, did your skin issues go away, or did you find that it was, how did you heal that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So they did. A lot of the problems went away, like almost everything went away, like that, like depression went away. I'm talking about like, I felt shitty every single day. I had food sensitivities. I had pain in my body. Like I had so many different symptoms. They all went away. However, one thing that does flare up, just being super transparent, when a big life event happens in my life, like when my dad got cancer a few years ago, and when I recently went through a big move and change because I moved out of Vancouver and I just made a lot of life decisions that I needed to make.
Yeah.
My psoriasis will flare up, but it doesn't stay very long. And it's only stress based on something big, where maybe I'm overworking and I've got a lot going on. So it's not like, it's not happening all the time, and it's not happening. It's not as big as it used to be. It's like, oh, I'm not listening to my body. Okay. Re-correcting here. Whereas before it was like everything was happening at once. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What a transformation.
It's huge. It's huge. I mean, yeah, no, that's massive. Continue. I don't know what I was going to say something before and I got totally sidetracked in my mind. So
You can interrupt me anytime. You jump in. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like the levels of healing, because I think that this is something that's very misunderstood. And I was just in conversation with a client about this the other day, and she was also talking about anxiety, and we're talking about trauma, and she's really wanting to make a bigger impact in the world. And the thing that blocks us from really being who we are, number one, which is one of the things I love about you, Heroes, like you're just you, and it's like so fun because it's like when I can fully see who someone is, it's like, oh, amazing, like I can trust you. Whereas like
That's exactly it.
Most people aren't themselves, and for me, I'm highly sensitive to that, probably from my childhood and trauma. It's like, is it safe? Is it safe? Is it safe? I love people who are oddly themselves, and when people aren't themselves, I'm like, can't trust you.
Yeah, I'm the same as you though. Like I have no bullshit. Like if I can't see emotional transparency and vulnerability and willingness from anybody, I just can't.
Totally.
Interesting is that, like, I think there's also a lot of people out there who think they're being themselves and think that they're speaking their truth and they're preaching the whole speak your truth and be vulnerable. But yet when you see them on Instagram or whatever, it's like so contrived.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fucking fake. Excuse my language, but
it is fake though.
It is fake. But yet they're preaching something that's not supposed to be fake. So that drives me absolutely bananas too.
It's just for a brand.
Then it's like, I think for the vast public, especially, like, who do you trust then? It's hard. Yeah.
It's unfortunate because and I can think of some people specifically who I've been in relationship with in some way, shape, or form. And I see who they're being online and what they're preaching and who they are branding themselves to be. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, like that person. And I'm not coming from a place of like judgment and they're wrong, because we're all on our journey. It's messy. And like, I'm sure there's areas of my life and my past or my future where, I'm going to get judged on it, whatever. But I can see, I'm like, the person you're pretending to be is the complete opposite of who you are.
Yeah.
And if people experience the other side of you, like, it's too bad that I did a post on this recently, like spirituality. To me, my definition of spirituality is literally just honoring your spirit, which means you're not numbing yourself. You're not trying to be someone else. You're literally like, oh, my spirit's telling me this. I'm going to honor that. And then honoring other people's spirits and allowing them to be them without trying to manipulate or change them. However, today, turn it into a brand where, you've got to like have the sage out and in your photos, and you have to, and I love sage and crystals. Like if you were to come to my place, you see that shit everywhere. Okay.
Same, yeah.
But what I'm saying though, it's like, it's more based on a look and popularity and
it's an aesthetic.
Words rather than the truth of who you're being every day. And that just,
Yep.
One's a magazine editorial photo spread, and one's actually an authentic lifestyle that's not trying to be something that it's not.
Yeah.
And I think that's the struggle with people who are actually living in their spirit, is they're like, I'm not going to try. I don't want to try to brand myself as spiritual because I am.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's huge. And here, when I've talked about this in a couple of episodes with either former yoga teachers or those that are teaching. And, when I first got my teacher training, it was all about, not to name drop, but I will, but it was all about Megan Curry. Do you remember Megan Curry?
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh yeah.
Of course.
And it was all about like, you can only be successful, especially as a woman at that time, where you could put your leg up here, and this was yoga, and you were wearing like itsy bitsy underwear, and you were, that was the thing. And it was very, it was damaging.
Yeah.
I remember in the yoga teacher training that I was in, and I think this person's awesome. I really respect her, but she was the main facilitator for my training. She basically told me I had too much personality and I wasn't going to make it as a yoga teacher, and was like really kind of like not nice to me. And she's like the head of the organization, and I do really respect her, and I think she's a great person. I just think she was obviously like going through something or whatever, or maybe that was her training. But I remember leaving feeling like, oh man, like I'm going to be the worst yoga teacher. No one's going to come to my classes. And then one of the other teachers who was facilitating said, don't lose who you are. You're going to be really successful. And within the first week of getting out of my yoga teacher training, I was working at a studio full time, and then I was running the studio, and then I ended up getting sponsored by Lululemon within like a month and a half. So it was because of what he said to me, because I didn't feel good enough because of what she said to me. And it was basically, she told me not to be who I am. And the guy's like, don't not be who you are.
Yeah.
You know?
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And I've got lots of stories like that too.
But I've got that too, though. Even, and again, like I am not afraid. I've been told that by places that I've been told where I felt I was celebrated for who I was, and realized that maybe I was celebrated for who I was, but because I didn't fit the mainstream demographic or the corporate culture of any yoga studio or fitness oriented studio in Vancouver, my opportunities were limited because of how authentic I was. And that they didn't translate to drawing the mass market of demographic, especially in the metro area that I actually live in. And if I wanted that community, which I did have before I couldn't sustain transiting and being able to be paid enough sustainably, which very few yoga teachers are in a studio realm, but some are, though. I will say some are. I wasn't willing to commute for an hour and a half round trip plus my teaching time and get paid and divide my pay by 4.
I'm giggling just because my studio is probably one of them, like on a smaller scale. So I had a very small yoga studio called the Yoga Root in North Van, but it was in response to all of this. So like I remember having meetings with teachers, but I wouldn't even call it a meeting. Like, let's just go have a coffee. I just want to like get to know you. Yeah. And Hero was one of them. That's how we met. But I'm like, no, we're not doing auditions. I'm not like, I just want to get to know you as a person, because I feel like if you are naturally you and we just have a regular coffee and that's how you teach, because to me, that's how you should teach, just from how you are naturally. Beautiful. That's awesome. And then I'd have teachers ask me, well, like how do you want me to teach? Like they would ask me those kinds of questions. I said, you don't have to ask me those questions. Like you teach how you teach. You teach from, and I'll use that word authentic, but just authentically you. Be vulnerable. Be like, I want to see you. I don't want you to fit yourself into a box. And that was the whole, yeah. So,
That's awesome. And like talking about like true identity and all this stuff, it's like the reason why we have such a hard time stepping into our true identity is because we have to move through our personality, which is who we have always been in our life. It's our past, it's our programming, it's our traumas, it's who we think we are, who we think we should be, who other people think we are, right? Who other people think we should be. And so it's very difficult to have that transition of who we have been to who we truly are, unless something big happens. And so one of the things I really want to talk about, are we still good for time, guys?
Oh my God, we're fine. We got all morning.
Because I totally just had I canceled an appointment before this, which was easy, but I was like, I want to make sure I have enough time for you guys so we can
yeah. Oh my God.
love it.
Yeah. Keep rolling. Yeah.
Cool. I love it. And so what I really want to speak on with, trauma and healing and what's misunderstood is, so first, there's the first layer of like, I'm fine. Everything's good. Nothing's wrong with me. And this used to be me, guys. Like I used to be so blocked from, even though I'm hypersensitive, blocked from what's going on internally, that when people would talk about self-love like 10 years ago, I would internally roll my eyes. But because I was super polite and the nice girl, I would be like, wow, sounds interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely think about that. But then I would go away and I would be like, that person's got some issues. I'm totally fine.
Totally.
So a lot of the people potentially in your classes who like can't handle you being so authentic, it's because they're like, why is this guy talking about self-love? Like,
Yes.
what's going on here? Like, I'm fine, right? And
Vulnerability. Yeah.
it's a protective mechanism
Yeah.
so that they don't have to feel something that they're not ready to feel.
Correct.
So that's the first stage. And then the second stage is like, oh my gosh, I'm really uncomfortable here. Something's wrong. I don't know what it is. And then it's like, oh, something's really wrong. I really like am not in a good space. Wake up calls, all the, the self-sorting of the tornado. There's shit flying everywhere. And then there's the like, okay, I'm gonna deal with this. I'm gonna be empowered about it, right? And it's like the empowerment stage. I remember I went to Landmark. Do you guys know what Landmark is?
I know what Landmark is, yes.
No. What is Landmark?
It's basically like a big personal development company. They're around the world, and it's an interesting process. Let's say that. And a lot of people have like big shifts in communication, their true identity, and all that stuff. But it's done in a very specific way that, in my opinion, feels very manipulative, and I just don't agree with it.
I'm glad you said that. That's
Well,
why I never did it.
It's like, let's break you down so that you have a breakthrough. Let's tell you who to be so that we can control you, so that you take the next step of what we want. And it was gross. I'd love to hear your opinion.
Well, yeah, okay, well, constantly, and I'm not afraid. This is one thing I told you about getting juicy, is that we're uncensored, and I really don't care if I offend people because I'm not doing it purposely. It's my opinion. And if you're offended by my opinion, my experience, that's your problem, not mine. I'm not being hurtful by any mean. But constantly going into places where in our community, and I don't just mean one place, I mean many places. This is a collective. You can tell that there is a similar jargon of way of thinking, feeling, and expressing that was very much like they had a lobotomy, legitimately had a non-physical lobotomy, and where everything was just a story. Everything is just, whatever. And that's like the legendary thing that Landmark drives into, is that everything is fake. Everything is just your perception. And it's like so contrived. And if you show any amount of vulnerability, emotional sensitivity, it's almost as if the person will just glaze over. Like there's nothing there, And I just find that's really unhealthy, because I feel like it's a projection of something that they actually haven't resolved. And the reason why they haven't resolved it is because they were forced to be broken down and to be emotionally so destroyed that whatever goes on, it's just cerebral. It's like, okay, that was me before. This is me now. It's like the lights are on, but no one is home.
That's so deep.
And it was very cult-like. And there were many people that asked me, "Oh my God, you would be perfect for Landmark. Have you heard of Landmark?" And I've had calls from people that I used to go to high school with. I've had people in industries or studios that have asked me to do Landmark and stuff. And I said, you know what? I choose not to follow that. I'm self-reliant in my own life skills and development. And I actually went through dialectical behavior therapy, which is actually a traditional form of psychology that's science-based and actually properly trained by proper medical professionals. And they have a lot of the same life skills that I've actually been able to apply, with addition to yoga philosophy. So I'm good, thanks.
So my question is now, does Landmark, are they really into recruiting? Like if you're a part of their, right?
Yes, it's a pyramid scheme.
Right. So you know what that reminds me of, which is the big news thing this year, because he actually got his sentence this year, is Nixium.
Is that the one where they brand people?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I know the one of the women who got out and was branded, and
oh my God,
doing a series on it right now.
It's totally fucked up, but like it basically, and I shouldn't parallel, like I don't know enough about Landmark, but there are some commonalities, because I believe that's how Nixium kind of started. But anyway, there's a documentary out there called The Vow that Nixium has out right now. And that the guy that started it has now been sentenced to 120 years in prison.
Yeah, so the woman who is the main person, it is the real person of that. She's the person who got out and was branded, and she's in my community.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know her like really personally. I've had a couple dinners with her and some friends like within the past few years when she was just getting out.
Wow.
But I'm really it's really amazing to see that she's because that's courageous.
100%.
Yeah, kudos to her.
Psychology or something, like you just don't want to, like it's like you like, we have to be real with things too. It's like, yeah, there are stories of things, but yeah, like you also need to look at, is this worth like potentially ruining my life going after? Because you could get taken down and be labeled as XYZ. Like there's some organizations that can actually take you down and make you seem like you are something that you're not. Like, it's unfortunate, but it's true. And I've heard horrible stories about Scientology and things happening. And I'm like,
Yep, great
that's
example.
scary. Like, it's the world that we live in has a lot of work to do, which is why we want people being who they are and speaking up, right?
Totally.
And actually, what I was thinking of before just came to mind about trauma. I kind of feel like when it comes to trauma, like you said, it's kind of like a still shot in time, and you tend to go back there when something triggers it. Well, I also kind of feel like with trauma, it's almost like if you've had that trauma and you haven't really dealt with it, so to speak, it's kind of like you've been stunted in growth wise to that point in your life. So it's almost like, even if it happened as a child, it's almost like there's part of you, and I feel this way, there's part of me that's almost like part of my growth has almost been stunted from some certain parts of trauma, and I haven't necessarily moved past there. And I feel like sometimes that I still am a child because of that.
Yeah. And so the power of, so I want to address something that you said, if that's okay. Is like, so with the stages of, and I love that we're talking about all of this as we get to certain points, because it's like, this is how we're all processing it, right? And so for example, Landmark, when I went to Landmark, which was like, I don't know, like maybe 7 years ago-ish, maybe 8 years ago, I did Landmark, the intro, and then I also did the advanced. And the foundational one that I did, the forum, they get you to call anyone that you have any kind of kitty cats, stop fighting.
I heard that.
Lewis, is basically what happens is they get you to call people you have any bad blood with and like complete things. So I called my ex-boyfriend, which wasn't a big deal, but it was like felt like a big thing because we hadn't talked in like years and whatever. And then I also called the guy who raped me 5 years before that. And so I call him, have a conversation with him, and I basically acknowledge that it happened. So a big part of healing is acknowledging something happened, because that's a really big step. And when we're in denial, well, we can't move forward. So I acknowledge it happened. It wasn't okay. And I forgive him. So that's what I said. And anyways, he blew up at me and whatever, it didn't go well, but I was so proud of myself for calling him, saying, I forgive you. Obviously, this has to do with your past and you've had trauma, which no person who hasn't had trauma would do that to someone. And this is someone that I knew. And so I forgive you. And he lost it. And anyways, I think at the end of the call, I told him, like, I maybe I wasn't the nicest. Like, the conversation didn't end well, because he was in denial and calling me crazy, and that never happened. He doesn't even know who I am, like just crazy, like denial stuff, right? And so I went up to the mic at Landmark, because there's like 100-ish people in the room, maybe like 50 to 100. And we have a breakthrough. You're supposed to go up to the mic. So I go up to the mic, super vulnerable. I think I've only told like one other person in my life that even happened, number one. And that was like 5 years ago. The guy ended up harassing me in university in a different province. Like, it was like bad. I had to go on medication just to go to sleep at night. Like, I was not in a good place, right? Like massive PTSD in my university. And the system we live in is messed up. That's another story. So I go up to the mic and I share what happened. Like, I'm really proud of myself. I like called my ex-boyfriend and whatever. And I also called this man. And as soon as I shared it, the man who was the facilitator was shaming me, because the conversation with the guy who raped me didn't end well. And I was just like, you know what I said to him? I was like, you know what? I'm really proud that I did that. And like, you can't take that away from me. And everyone like got up and started clapping. Because they were like, holy shit, like this woman, like this girl, it's more of like a girl, like earlier 20s. I was like, that was a huge moment for me. But like the shame, and I was just like, you're shaming me for doing something that you told me to do, but it didn't go exactly as you wanted me to. Yeah. And I was like, yuck,
Oh, that's, I don't even know. have no words.
What did the facilitator do once he saw that that the majority of the room, everyone, was on your side? What did he do?
Nothing. It was just like, okay, who's next? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like it didn't even happen.
Yeah.
But so after that stage, so they really like what I'm getting from it, and I could be wrong because, you know, I only experienced 2 of their programs. It's not really about them. I think it's more about the overall healing culture that we see. It's more about empowerment. I'm so over that. I did that thing. I had that conversation. I'm complete. I'm healed. And so after that, I was telling myself, I'm healed from my trauma. I'm complete. I'm over it. And the thing is, the empowerment stage is just like the stage 3 or 4,
Yep.
you know? And if you get to that point, that's pretty good. But most people think that's the end point. And actually, that's just the beginning point. Because if you're in a empowerment, you are trying to prove something, you're trying to push through something. And we all know someone who we've been in contact with who's like, I am so over her, I am so over him, I am so over that job, I am so over that thing that happened 10 years ago. But they're talking about it, and you can literally like energetically, physically, mentally, emotionally see how it's still impacting them, but they're in the empowerment state. This is actually the state where we can do the most amount of harm as healers, as facilitators, as leaders, because we are operating from one end of the spectrum and we haven't come into our center in alignment. So the stage after that is, after the empowerment is, okay, like I'm not healed. I need to do the work. You do the work. And you're like, okay, like I think I've, you know, I felt the things, I've like gone deeper, and, you know, I'm working on like forgiveness and all that, but it's more of like an active practice, like the reminding and all of that stuff. And so it's like you're consciously moving through things. And then the next space is, you know, it could have happened, it could have not happened, but either way, I accept everything that's happening in the world because I understand how the universe works. And so it's a space of just neutrality. It's not saying that it wasn't okay. It's not like discounting your pain or your experience, but you're in such a place of
contentment.
You've gone beyond the healing that it's no longer, you're not on one side or the other. It's like you're literally, you see everything exactly for the truth of what it was. And you're like, oh, that man had a lot of trauma. That woman didn't listen to her intuition that night. That happened. Oh, this is part of her life purpose to teach trauma. Oh, what can we do to make the system better? But it's not a place of me. It's a place of we and the entire.
Yeah.
So that is the stage of healing. Everything before that is BS.
Well, and I love that word neutrality because
Yes.
I've been doing some body scans, excuse me, where just instead of labeling feelings or sensations of the body as good or bad, they're not good, they're not bad. It just is. So how do we get to that place of neutrality, whether it be, you know, actions, thoughts, feelings, all those kinds of things? But that is like the mecca. Like, I'm really happy that you said that word neutrality, because that's something I forgot, actually.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I gotta say that though. I mean, I just think about my teaching and the transitions I've made, and realizing that I could lay out, as you said, I was in the empowerment stage to, you know, reclaim my sense of freedom, my sense of self-expression, my sense of feeling in my own true identity, which is what I call my brand, the True Identity Project. Always a work in progress, because we are, you know, Satnam, Kundalini Yoga, which I didn't correlate till about a year ago. But anyway, more importantly, I realized those moments that you just spot out every step of the way that you talked about. And it's only in the last few months that I've actually arrived in a place of neutrality, not just empowerment and then reliving trauma or speaking in a way where it was healing in terms of getting it out of my system, and the traumas and the mental scars and emotional scars that have come from it. And I think, honestly, the pandemic has been a really healthy way for me to find that place of contentment, neutrality, and pushing past that stage 3, stage 4 lens of trauma recovery, because it just makes you realize what's important and what you need to just let go of, and just realize what impact does it really have now that it's not part of your life anymore.
Well, it's super interesting. Like, I love that you just shared that. And it's also interesting, like, if we talk about leadership for a moment, right? I'm okay. Like, I am so okay with being wrong. Like, I'm so okay with being wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Like, usually I'll learn it the hard way and be like, oh, I was really wrong. I was really like in the space of empowerment. But the thing is, no matter what level we're at, like for you, Hero, when you were in the space of empowerment and teaching there, you were helping the people at the stage below you that wanted to get to that stage. So all of these levels are actually a part of the entire world's evolution. So it's also so important that we don't shame our past selves or others that we see online that we're like, oh, they're pretending to be this and they're not, because they're helping the people who are even more potentially disconnected.
That's
and
right.
you know what I mean? To move to that next level, but those people aren't necessarily ready for your medicine or my medicine.
Right.
And what I find with my work, people either love me and love my work because I'm direct, I don't BS around, or they really don't like me because if someone's out of alignment or, you know, doing something that I'm like, that's not truth, they're like, oh, never had someone confront me before, she's aggressive. And I'm like, I'm not aggressive. I'll just be like, oh, like, that's not the truth. Like, and I've had someone be like, oh, she's super aggressive. I'm like, I literally just called her out online to me about something. And I said it, I'm like, yeah, that's not true. Like, this is what this is this. And you're saying I'm aggressive. I literally just spoke truth. Like, so it's also our perception. And that's another thing. It's like not believing anything anyone says about anything because we actually don't know the truth because everyone is in their distortions of wherever they're at.
It's an illusion. Perception is an illusion, and perception is a perception of a perception of a perception.
Right?
How do you
what it is.
And how do you deal with, you know, thinking that maybe you've gotten over something and you're at like a higher level, but then you have a major setback and then you start to feel guilty about yourself. And then you start to feel like, oh my God, like I thought I was at this place, but I'm actually not. And I'm never going to heal and blah, blah. And then just keep spiraling. So how do you even that out? Like, what's a tip you can give somebody who feels like they've, you know, been growing and then
well, it's kind of like, so the best way for me to give advice on this, and like no one's perfect, I'm literally like just on the journey of life and sorting things out like anyone else, but one thing that I find really helpful, I've noticed this in the space of like relationships for me. So I was with someone for 8 years and then divorced like 4 years ago, and then in a relationship for 1.5 years, and I've been single ever since, which I'm really happy about. Yeah, I feel like I'm going to get super like vulnerable, as in like, I mean, this is how I am all the time, but mainly not on camera. It's fine. But I had this moment, this is literally last week, and I really am blaming this on the full moon, but obviously it was a deep thought that I had that I wasn't aware of. I was at the gym. I was working out because I was moving the energy, right? And I just had this moment of, oh my gosh, what if I never find my person? Like, I love love. Like, I am like a hopeless romantic. I love snuggles. I just love loving someone. And I remember being I think I was at Winners or something a week ago, and I saw this plaid shirt, and it sounds so dumb, but it was a trigger. It was a trigger for me. And my ex-boyfriend, I loved buying him plaid because he looked super sexy in it. And there's just something about plaid and I love buying presents for people. Like, it's one of my things that I do. I'll be out doing something and something will remind me of my friend. I'll be like, oh, I have to get this for them, you know? And so I'm in line, 2 different stores, they come together. And I was just like, oh, I really want to go buy that for so-and-so. I'm like, we're not together. That was 1.5 years ago. And he cheated on you with multiple women. And it took you 1.5 years to heal from that. Okay, yep, not going to do that. But just like the wanting to do something. And it's like, it wasn't about him. It was about me wanting to be with someone. And over the last 1.5 years, I was actually like, I love being single. It's so fun. I don't even know if I want to be in a relationship again, even though I love. So I was at the gym the other night and I was running and I just started crying. And I was like, I'm never going to find my person. I'm going to be single forever. And I just had this moment of just like deep sadness. And then it was like the deep sadness of like being single. And I'm like, I've never felt this before. And then also, then there was this guy that I've been connected with a little bit who, anyways, I've had a bit of a crush on him for a while, vice versa, but nothing's happened there. And he's an amazing person and there could be a lot of potential there. But then there was the fear, the duality, right? And this is like where the dance is for all of us, is like, oh my gosh, him and I could potentially, if I actually put the effort in and time in, that could potentially be something really powerful and connectedness. And then there was the fear of connecting with someone. And so I was in this back and forthness about that. And I was judging myself, Rachel. I was like, after I'm like, who am I? Why was I like, I'm so far back. I thought I was feeling good about being single for the last year and a half. Like I'm feeling so good, and so much judgment. And then what I did actually was I did a process on myself. So I'm all about like doing processes. This is what I do through different offerings and when I work with people, but some things can't be processed. Some things just have to be felt, but I felt that so deeply. And I was like, okay, this is obviously very deep beneath all the layers. But when I did the process of bringing it into a space of neutrality, basically you just go from, we could even do it right now, you feel into one. So I felt into like, oh my gosh, like I am going to be single my whole life. This is so sad, whatever the feeling was. And I felt that as fully and as deeply as possible. And then I went to the opposite side. Oh my gosh, there's like this person that I could potentially have like a really great connection with. And I felt into that possibility. And I just went back and forth, back and forth. And then after I did that, I was just like, yeah, there's a possibility there. And yeah, you know what? Obviously, I'm going to find my person. I don't know if I'm actually ready to be in a relationship yet because this is coming to the surface. This is actually a sign I have a little bit more healing to do. And that's okay. Do you know what I mean? But I am beyond where I was a year and a half ago, because a year and a half ago, I was healing from some deeper pieces. And this is actually a huge piece of growth because I'm more clear on what was going on beneath the surface that I didn't have access to a year and a half ago. So it's like sometimes what looks like we're going a step or two back actually is a sign that we're clearing something out or we have a deeper awareness. So it's kind of like a tornado. Okay. Yeah. So when the storm is happening and let's just say you're sitting in your house and there's a tornado, all your shit's flying everywhere. There's huge pieces of furniture and you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And you can sit there and just observe and be like, kind of like with our mind, right? Oh my gosh, I'm going to be single. Oh my gosh, there could be a connection. That's scary too. I don't want either of them. And you're seeing it all sort. And it's like, holy smokes, right? Like I better just sit here because if I get caught up in any of this, I'm going to be a mess, right? Chaos. And then it's like, once the tornado keeps going over time, all of a sudden, all the furniture, all the big things are gone, but there's dust. There's dust, there's finer pieces. And when you look around, you don't really see it. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here. Everything's super clear. It looks way clearer than it has ever been before. But then you get some dust in your eye and you're like, oh my gosh, that hurt. It's so fine and small. And so sometimes when we're growing, we have like some dust in our eyes or we see a little bit of dust and we make it a big deal and we judge ourselves when really before there were like, huge pieces of furniture going around and we're comparing it, but we feel the dust more deeply because we've done all of the bigger healing that we are actually available to feel that deeply so that we complete it more quickly. So the more that we feel on our journey of healing, the more accelerated we are at moving forward. So it's actually a sign of growth.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful analogy. I love it because
it makes sense.
Now you make me want to stand on a lazy boy.
Well, I think that to me, that sort of gives a little reason as to why, for example, maybe some big shitstorm might be happening. And then like, you're kind of like in this fight or flight mode. And usually like for my personality, I tend to like fight and I get through it. I'm like, whew, I got through that. I didn't have a lot of anxiety, blah, blah, blah. That's great. A week later or so, that's when I start to feel the effects of some instance or some trauma, whatever you want to call it. So that's almost like that's the dust you're speaking of.
Yeah, it's like the dust. It's like, so I think of us as, I always like to think of puppies because I just really want a puppy. Especially like little baby golden retrievers. Like, don't get me started because I might just get one. I just bought a home with big yards, so you never know. But I think of like us we're all like puppies, right? And unfortunately, a lot of us roll in the mud. We get a bunch of gunk on us, and we're like, "Oh, something's wrong with me. You know, I'm gross. I have all this shit on me." It's like, no, you just need to get cleaned up. So you like clean up the puppy, give it a bath, and you're like, "Oh, it's clean again." And then next time the puppy doesn't roll in you know, the gunk again. Maybe it gets a little bit of dust on it. It's just about, we're like diamonds or puppies, and we don't see ourselves clearly just because we have a little bit of dirt on us that needs to be polished off. But with the human conditioning and all the shame and guilt and judgment and you know, branding and bullshit that's out there that's distorting reality of who we need to be and all this other stuff and what's real and what's not, when it's actually the opposite. We were like, oh my gosh, like I have dust on me. Oh my gosh. It's like, yeah, but you're a diamond. Like you just need to be polished. So it's like just knowing that, like, if you have a diamond, like I used to be married, so I had a diamond, and you get it cleaned. And if you don't clean it, then of course it's going to be a little bit dirty, but you're probably not going to roll in the gunk anymore because you know better. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, just like brushing your teeth every day. It's so important. And, you know, yoga, as you guys were saying, and meditation and everything else, Kundalini, that's one of my favorite kinds of yoga, is like, we just need to make sure we're polishing ourselves up. And when something comes up, just be like, oh, I'm just polishing the diamond. Oh yeah, that came up and I'm just polishing it. And the more you polish it, the bigger things are going to come, because you're going to be so sparkly clean that the stuff's just going to fly off of you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. It's conditioning yourself.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, and I think that just because you're starting to feel better or you think you're feeling better, don't stop the work, right? So I think there's a constant some sort of self-help or self-love or routine that and that was my mistake, is that like when I started to feel better, I would stop meditating, then I would stop doing all these things. Like, no, I feel good now. But no, it's a constant, you know, constant practice.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Totally. It's also interesting too, like what I've found to be really helpful within my journey over the past year, especially with trauma. Like I don't know if you guys know this. This is something I learned kind of the hard way over the last year, but we actually can remember, we can access traumas from when we were unconscious. And we can literally go back to things and remember, actually see outside of our body and everything that's going around. And so it's not only the trauma of like being awake, it's the trauma of literally being asleep. And a trauma for me came up a few months ago, and I literally was like, I was in a Kundalini class and I was sitting there and I was just doing my Kundalini. I was also on a 10-day water fast. So, you know, it just like shoots, you know, gets you really clear. And I had all these memories of being unconscious, and it had to do, I won't get into detail because I haven't really shared this. Anyways, there were some pieces where I was unconscious and I was remembering something that happened, and it was within the last couple years, and it was something I was not aware of. And I was like having like this, like remembering things and just like, oh my gosh, like this happened. And, you know, like just started like, you know, when you cry, but you're not crying, just like tears coming down. Yeah. And it was like this full body release in the middle of Kundalini. I think the yoga teacher saw me, but like, you know, like it wasn't even like, she probably couldn't have even come over because she was like, holy shit, like she's going through something. That was just like feeling all the things. I went for a drive after, and I went to like Whole Foods, and I was outside of Whole Foods, and I just had like all this like shame, guilt, like all this like confusion. I sat outside of Whole Foods for like an hour, couldn't get out of my car because I was just like in shock, went home. Anyways, I told one of my good friends about it. Hey, don't do that. My cat's eating the cord. And no. And so anyways, where I was going with this was, the natural part of what I would want to do is I would want to do a trauma release because I have all these tools, right? But because I was so in it, like you can't process things. There's some things that you actually need to allow yourself to fully feel and be in to move through. Not everything can be practiced. Not everything can be healed right away. And also on our journey of healing trauma, we're exposed to what we're able to move through at the time. So a year and a half, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been available to have those memories because I hadn't done the level of healing yet. So again, going back to what you're saying, Rachel, earlier, is I could have judged myself like, oh my gosh, it's coming up, you know, from whatever time ago, I should meditate, I should do all these things. But it's like my friend came over that weekend and we actually did the opposite of everything we should do. We went out and we had, you know, some wine, we had good food. Like we literally just had a bunch of fun for 3 days. And she's a coach and a guide like me. And we have a lot of similar modalities that we use, but like I didn't do any of them. And there was a week there where I didn't do anything that I would train or potentially want to do with a client because I literally just had to be with myself. And it was like, so it's like the over processing and then the I'm not going to do anything. And I think that both are helpful, like just to ask yourself, what do I need now with what's coming up for me? And I think that's the journey of just listening to ourselves. Right?
Yeah. Yes. And that comes with practice and comes with knowing yourself too. That's not something that somebody who's just starting out in their journey might know how to do. But I've been there too, where I've known I'm like, no, I'm not ready to quite, you know, get super nitty gritty with this yet. I will definitely do that. But right now, just need to take a step back and like go for a walk or like have a glass of wine or watch a good movie and just kind of not myself the right way.
Distract a little bit, like,
yes.
You know, that's okay as long as you're not addicted to it and doing it all the time, right? Yeah.
What I wanted to ask you, Deidre, is there anything else you would like to add as we wrap up our discussion, our time together, what you're doing, any time to plug what your businesses are, your podcast, anything that you want to share with anyone that will soon be seeing this recording?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Hero. So what I can say is, so one of the quotes that I love to use is, the question is not whether or not you're here to do great things. Like I really believe that we're all here to bring our magic, bring our essence, bring our true identity forward and make an impact. The question is, are you ready to wake up to the truth of who you are and who you're meant to be? Which is the deeper work that I do with people. So if you like this juicy conversation, I would love to invite you on over to check out my podcast. It's called Radically Aligned. It's on iTunes, it's on Spotify, it's on Simplecast. And I do deep dives on, you know, relationship, sex, spirituality, awakening, all the things. There's no filter similar to this. And I'd love to invite you to check that out. And if you want to see more about the work that I do, you're interested in potentially some of my programs. I have a program on waking up. Like it's basically a Wake Up to Your Truth 101 course, and it's called Turn Your Light On. I have that coming up again in the new year. It's super, super powerful. And you can go to radicallyaligned.com. And if you want to connect on social, it's just Deidre Sirianni. You can find me. I'd love to connect and hear from you. And if you want to learn more about trauma, my podcast is a great resource. And also I have a TEDx that I did last year. If you just go to YouTube, you type in my name, Unhealed Trauma. It's called Unhealed Trauma, the Root Cause of All Suffering. I share a little bit about different stories and how you can identify some of those pieces in your life. So thank you guys so much for having me. You guys are amazing. I love our conversation.
Oh, amazing. And thank you for being so willing to chat. And we also want to meet your cats. Can we meet your cats?
Well, yeah, can you show your kitties?
Yeah.
One of them is
a pussies.
I almost said that, but you did. Oh, it's a little mitten.
Hi.
He's like, Mom, like I didn't agree to this. And then where the other one is, yeah.
Oh my God. And then the last thing that we love to ask our guests is, as we are getting juicy, if you were to be a juice, any kind of juice, fruit or vegetable combo, what would you be and why?
Okay, so I'm going to say celery juice. And the reason why is because I'm drinking celery juice every day right now, because it kills parasites. It aligns, and parasite, I think of anything that's not true. And like, dark energy within you that you don't need. So some people love it. People who are disciplined and that want to heal and transform themselves, they love it, but other people hate it. So I feel like I'd be celery juice.
Amazing. Okay, it's been honestly like this was awesome, and I really appreciate your willingness, your vulnerability, your true identity, all of our true identities, the share this time together. And I didn't know you were in the interior, so definitely, Rachel, connect with Deidre. Definitely connect, because you two, I can tell, would just be like are already like this.
And I was even thinking about moving to Vernon before I was looking into it, but I'm in that area, so we'll have to connect. I'd love that.
I would love that as well. Yeah. And I mean, this is a whole other topic of conversation, but my husband and I actually moved to Vernon about 3 years ago from Vancouver. We probably have maybe similar reasons as why we left, but we can talk about that later.
Thank you guys. You're awesome.
Thank you so much.
Mwah.
Mwah. Talk soon. Be safe. Bye.
Thank you.